Hi folks, how are you doing? I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. I hope that you're finding the love and witnessing the blessings that are there in life in these challenging times. It is tough at times, I know, but there is hope. Life is beginning to return to some sense of normality. And remember, of course, that we're all in this one together. So let's live in and through love together. I'm offering devotions as my little bit of hope, doing what I can, playing my role, being a part of the solution. These devotions are offered as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit and for the soul. And the title for today's devotion is Fear and Love, Finding the Courage to Be. So I invite us to still ourselves. Let's invite a loving presence to be here amongst us and to awaken from deep, deep within us all. I have lit the flame of freedom in this cup of belonging, acceptance and love. We join together despite our physical separation, united in our devotion to life and to love. Holy One, who has given us the breath of life, today we remember to breathe deeply, to rest, to take in, to pause before we act, and then to take in another deep breath, poised on the edge, and risk jumping in, risk taking action, risk speaking up, risk using the gifts that we have been given, so that at the end of our life we can say with absolute clarity that no part of our existence was wasted in fear of failure or fear of success. Hold us, prepare the way to begin to offer the gift of our awakened presence, full of love and full of light today. These are the prayers of our hearts that we lift up now and hold in this silence together as we move forward in the spirit of love. Amen. So I'm going to begin with a story from my old favourite, that holiest of holy fools, Nasruddin. So Nasruddin was walking alone at night when he saw a group of people approaching in the far distance. Instantly his imagination began to toy with him. They are surely robbers, he thought. No, why just robbers? Perhaps murderers, even cutthroats. They're about to set upon me, a lonely traveller, and leave me for dead and steal all my possessions. How are my wife and children going to cope without me? As you can imagine, Nasruddin's heart began to pound. His mouth became dry and his palms became sobbing wet. He shook from head to toe and found himself breathing like an unfit man running to the finishing line at the end of his first marathon. Breathing like I did at my first day back at the gym on the old treadmill this week. Really trying to catch his breath. The man was panicking. He was terrified. And having thoroughly terrified himself, he stumbled into a nearby graveyard and cowered, shaking inside an open tomb, awaiting his fate. Meanwhile, the harmless strangers, worried by his dramatic behaviour, approached him and looked with concern down into the tomb. "What, pray, are you doing down there?" they asked. Nasruddin, now calmed down a little, said, Well, put it this way. I am here because of you, and you are here because of me. Why are you here? The other day I received a phone call from the local funeral directors, Ashton Brooks. They thought I was the perfect person for this particular challenging funeral. Why me, I wonder. During the conversation, Alice and the funeral arranger said that Clive, the funeral director, had seen me in Altrincham looking very casual. Very casual indeed, he said. And I could just imagine him saying that. He's a rather dapper dressed man. Anyhow, after a little banter and some further conversation, I realised where and when he'd seen me. I was out walking and talking with a friend. He had something big to talk to me about, it seems. It seems he had decided to propose to his long-term partner. They'd both been married before and had grown-up children. And he'd already sought permission from his children and her children, actually, as well as her parents. Actually, it appeared the only person who didn't know was his partner. He bought a ring in consultation with her daughter and had booked the time and place in the gardens at Dunham Massey. The spot he'd chosen was his or their favourite bench. Now, he obviously had quite a bit of fear about this all, and it was this that he wanted to talk through with me. Not that I could give him what he needed. That said, I could walk with him and listen as he cemented the faith and courage that he needed to fulfil this beautiful act of love. And he found the courage, but of course, he still had to do the act himself. So one thing that no one else can give us, the actual act itself. We can find the strength and inspiration, but we still have to do it. We still have to walk through it. We still have to put our one foot in front of the other. Well, on Monday morning, I received a beautiful message of love from him. It brought a tear to my eye, because guess what? She said yes. He sent me a lovely picture of the ring on her finger and of him holding her hand. It was beautiful to see love manifested right there, right in front of my eyes, on these little devices. Love gave him the courage to be what he needed to be that day. And then he did it. Just beautiful. A few days earlier, I had another conversation with an old friend. He has a salon in Leeds and, of course, was reopening this week. He told me he was feeling a bit nervous about it all. Well, I told him that this was quite natural, that he was experiencing that kind of return to school feeling in his stomach that reminding him of what it was like when we were kids at school on a Sunday afternoon, coming into Sunday evening, that horrible feeling that comes over your stomach, that sense of dread about having to go back to school. I reminded him that it used to come over us in that strange late afternoon feeling. It would come over just after the end of Bullseye, I reckon, and just before Scylla began singing Surprise, Surprise. Can you remember that feeling? It may have been different reminders for you, but that feeling that used to come into your stomach when you had to return to something you didn't want to do. Anyway, I think both the empathy and the humour helped him, and he of course returned this week. Now, there's quite a bit of nervousness and fear around at the moment, isn't there? Life is beginning to return to normal and folk are experiencing all types of fear for a variety of reasons. Fear about the vaccines and whether they will work long time, as well as fears about the complications potentially arising from the vaccines. Fears about businesses reopening. Will they survive after the challenges of the last year or more? There are fears of the virus rising again as we reopen or other strains spreading through us. Will the vaccines treat them? There are fears of life returning to some sense of normality. Will things ever be the same again? Will we ever be close to one another physically? Will we be too afraid? Yes, there are many fears and they're all understandable. And one thing though, we must not dismiss them, and we certainly should not ridicule others for feeling them. These feelings need to be understood and they need to be empathised with. I have my own. I've certainly had them this week. I'm sure we all have. It's part of our human heart. Now, of course, there's nothing new with folk experiencing these fears. They're always with us. They're a part of our humanity. Okay, they're manifesting in a particular area at this time, but the fears and the feelings, they're not new. And neither, by the way, is the courage required to overcome them. This courage that will allow us to live in the love that will overcome that fear. There's nothing new in that either. Fear is a powerful emotion. It has the power to inhibit, but also the power of allure. There's something fascinating about it. And of course, fear comes in many forms. Forest Church identified 5 types of fear, which kind of goes along with the 6 types of love, I suppose. It's good that there's more love than fear, the types of love than fear. He associated the 5 types with the body, the intellect, the conscience, the emotions, and the soul. I'll just give you a brief overview of what he said. The first is fright, which is centred in the body. It's a kind of instinctive fear designed to protect us from physical danger. It's that feeling that makes us jump when we watch a horror film, or that feeling that gets the blood pumping and wakens our senses. You can feel it in your physical being. It allows us to respond to physical danger. I had the feeling only this morning when I got cut up in traffic. The fright instinct kicks in and allows us to act appropriately to danger. The second is worry, which is centred in the intellect. This is a fear that is produced by our worst imaginings. Often these feelings are not real at all and can be blown out of all reasonable proportion. I've talked with several people this week that have had these. Shortly before he died, Mark Twain mused on this kind of stuff. He said, "I am an old man and I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." It's the same with our fears, is it not? The third type that Forrest identified is guilt, which is centred in the conscience. This is this fear of being caught out or found out due to something that we've done in our past. It's a fear we often carry with us and can be projected into so much of our lives. It's kind of that feeling of being an imposter, of being found out, of people realising you're not what you think you are or what you're projecting perhaps. It's that feeling that can come over us actually, if you've ever had this, as you pass through the security at airports and you think you're going to get pulled over even though you've done absolutely nothing wrong. Or that feeling that you get when you come out of a store with the security device and you feel like it's going to go off, like you've done something wrong, like somehow, even though you've never shoplifted in your life, you're going to get done for shoplifting. Even though you've never stolen a thing in your life. This strange feeling that so many people have. Most people actually. The fourth type being insecurity, which is centred in the emotions. This is that feeling of fear that's prompted by feelings of inadequacy, as if there's something actually wrong with us. It's a fear that breeds this need to constantly seek approval from other people. It is a form of narcissism and forms this deep self-consciousness. And this deep self-consciousness makes us unconscious and unconnected to life itself. It disconnects us actually. We feel lonely from it. And the fifth, and perhaps the most debilitating, is dread, which is centred in the soul. It's a fear that's generated by the general uncertainty of life, something the last year or so has really shown to us, hasn't it? Here's what Forrest Church said about this feeling in his book Freedom from Fear. "Man himself produces dread," wrote the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. "We manufacture it whenever we attempt to control things over which we hold no final authority. We reduce life to a battleground where we struggle against insurmountable odds. Fearing every transition from certainty to uncertainty, we devote our full energy to protecting ourselves against loss. Dread is the opposite of trust. The more we dread death and dying, the more alarming life and living turn out to be." Fear has many faces. and all of them are powerful in their own ways. We each of us experience every type of fear at different times in our lives. Think about the feelings of fear you've experienced recently. See if you can identify which of the 5 or a mixture of the 5 you've experienced. Maybe look at the last week of your life. I'm sure it's been present in some form or other, even if it's just the fright instinct. Fear is a natural human reaction to life. Fear is not the problem. No, the problem is the power that fear can have over us, that can paralyse us or cause us to act in ways we wouldn't want to. And the key really is to find the courage to overcome the fear. And of course, where does courage come from? It comes from love. I've seen wonderful examples of this all week long. My friend in the gardens at Dunham Massey being a beautiful example of this just last Monday. He chose courage. He found the courage to be and to do what he needed to do. But of course, he still had to do the action himself. That's how we overcome fear. That's how we overcome the power of debilitating fear. We need to find the courage to truly be and do what we need to do. And then we need to do it, of course. All it takes is a little faith and a little love to create the courage just to be. Which sounds really simple, doesn't it? Well, it is quite simple, but that doesn't make it easy. We grow as we act more courageously. The courage grows as we act more courageously, really. But so that the fear grows as we are overcome by fear. As we refuse to act because of fear, then fear gets more power over us. To live in courage, that's the way forward. And courage in many ways is the very essence of life. Maybe courage is our daily bread. Anne Nin once said, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. And I'm sure we can all think of moments when our lives have either expanded or shrunk in proportion to our courage. Remember, as I've shared before, courage comes from the French word cœur, meaning heart. To have courage is to have strength of heart. Courage is a consistent and sustaining love. It is a spiritual energy that sustains us in sickness and in health, in loss and disappointment. It's courage that allows us to be what we're here to be. Some say there are only 2 real emotions, fear and love. I'm not convinced by that, really. Because I don't think if you're feeling the emotion of fear that you lack love. Not to just feel fear. The problem isn't fear itself, rather the problem is the power that fear can have over us. The problem is not feeling fear, it's being ruled by fear, it's being paralysed by fear. How often in life do we say no to it because we have become paralysed by fear? How often do we act in ways we wouldn't want to because we're being ruled by fear? It's not fear, it's lack of courage that's the problem. You will always feel fear, but you can also find the courage to overcome that fear. You've all done it at some point in your life. You know that. It's love that we need, and we need love to come alive in our lives. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to the size of our hearts. Life shrinks or expands in service to life itself. It's all about heart. It's all about courage. It's all about being all that we can be in life. Fear, the power of fear can stop us doing that, but courage can help us overcome it too. To live by courage is to live by strength of heart and to live from our hearts in the ordinary everyday activities of life. No, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture of bravery. Courage is a way of living and breathing. It's about living openly and vulnerably in the real world. Courage comes in those ordinary acts of love as we walk through our daily lives. It's courage that allows us to learn that even when life has betrayed us, that love is still present. It is courage that allows us to stay open to life even when life's really difficult. It's courage that's formed in our hearts. It's courage that is the ultimate act of faith. It's courage that keeps us open to life so that we can live in love. Isn't that what we need? This brings to mind a verse from one of my favourite hymns. The hymn is Others Call It God. It goes something like this. A picket frozen on duty, a mother starved for her brood, and Socrates drinking hemlock, and Jesus on the road. And millions who, though nameless, the straight hard pathway trod. Some call it consecration, and others call it God. But the straight, hard pathway of faith is not easy. It's not always easy to keep moving on, especially when you feel life has betrayed you, especially when you feel discouraged, especially when fear takes its grip. I love the images depicted in this verse. They were of characters who had the courage to do, to be what they believed that they were here to do, what they were here to be. Whether it's a picket on duty, or a mother giving everything for her children, or the likes of Jesus and Socrates, who were willing to sacrifice their lives for love or for truth. Real inspirations. But thousands and millions of nameless people are inspirations too. I've witnessed it all week. People finding the courage to be. But I'm just going to explore that verse a little bit, or some of the characters in the verse, a couple in particular. I'll begin with one of my favourites, Socrates. Socrates was charged by the Athenian council with corrupting the minds of the young and of believing in deities of his own invention instead of the gods recognised by the state. Oh, terrible, eh? Socrates courageously contested the charges against him, but ultimately lost, and as a result was condemned to die. He accepted the judgment of his peers while responding with these immortal words. The difficulty is not so much to escape death. The real difficulty is to escape from doing wrong, which is far more fleet of foot. He was accusing his accusers, I think, there subtly. Socrates did not fear death because he felt that it would take nothing from him of value. As he said to the court, I have never lived an ordinary life. I do not care for the things that most people care about, making money, having a comfortable home, high military or social rank. No, not for him. Integrity was in everything. Neither did he fear what death would bring, which he saw as either the sweetest sleep or a journey to a better place, a place of justice. As he proclaimed, nothing can harm a good man either in life or after death. He had nothing to fear in his eyes. Socrates would rather have surrendered his life than his integrity. Both in life as in death, he perfectly illustrated the courage to be. He had the integrity and therefore courage to say, I have a more sincere belief than any of my accusers, and I leave to you and to God to judge me as it shall be best for me and for yourselves. Jesus on the rood, which is Jesus on the cross, of course, like Socrates drinking hemlock, is another incredible example of someone living out the courage to be, an example and beacon to us all. But he was not immune from fear. In the gospel accounts of his life, he rarely quoted scripture, and yet in his final moments he did. But he did not quote the comforting 23rd Psalm, I shall walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. No, he showed fear here. He quoted the much starker 22nd Psalm. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou far from helping me? Anyone identify with those feelings? I have many times. He did not quote the comforting words, "My cup runneth over." Instead, he cried out, "I thirst." I thirst, feeling lost and abandoned. Who has not felt that way? Some might say, well, where's the courage here? Well, the courage is in what comes next, as he utters those immortal words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And of course, in these words lies the essence of his message of radical love, which includes all, that brings all into his circle of love. No one is excluded. In these words lies the essence of his message of radical love. For Socrates, integrity gave him the strength to be, whereas for Jesus, it was love. The love of God and the love of neighbour as for self. He surrendered himself utterly to his purpose and to his God as he uttered those immortal words, "Father, I commend my life unto thy spirit." Two wonderful examples here, but there are thousands and millions all around us. It's in love that we find the courage to truly be, to overcome the power of fear, through living in and through love, truth and integrity. For love will always overcome fear. Love will always enable us to find the courage to truly be what we're meant to be and to do what we're here to do. But of course the action's always ours. It's love that enabled the picket to stand in the freezing cold, to stand up for what they believed in. It's love that motivated the mother to sacrifice herself for her children. It's love that enabled both Jesus and Socrates to make their ultimate sacrifice. It's love that gave them the courage to be. And courage comes from heart. It's what it means, and it's what it means to live in love. I remember many years ago being told by my old minister, the Reverend John Midgley, that the one prayer that's always answered is the prayer for courage. We pray for courage, and courage will come if we act in the way we're meant to act. If we don't, then it will diminish, of course. And our lives will diminish too. But no one does this perfectly. Sometimes we're all overcome by fear. But we can begin again in love. Every moment we can begin again in love. We will always know the emotion of fear. We will always feel it. We need to feel the emotion of fear. It's a natural instinct. That said, we never need be enslaved by fear. To be free of fear, or the power of fear at least, all we need to do is live in integrity and live in love, and the courage to simply be will shine out from our very being. And in doing so, we will not only liberate ourselves, but we will be a source of light to others who in turn may be inspired to liberate themselves and inspire others to be liberated too. And thus life will grow and improve for us all. Let's be beacons to one another. Let's be examples to one another of how we can live if we live in faith, love and truth, offering hope to one another. So let love and truth show us the way to be all that we were born to be. Let's find the courage to truly be. I'm going to end today with a few words of blessing. We need to bless more. You know, we can all bless, and we bless by giving our whole hearts to life. So let's begin today. Let's give our whole hearts to life and encourage one another. Encourage one another to be all that we can be. So I offer these words as a final blessing for today. Let us once more return to our lives. Let us live open-heartedly, so that the Spirit that lives to set us free can enter into us and fill our hearts, so that we can become beacons of love and connection to those that we meet in this world. Let's find the courage to be, and let's encourage one another to be all that they can be. Let's carry this spirit of love and truth and integrity in our hearts, and let's do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Amen.